Artist Tom Prochaska is a painter and printmaker who also draws with glass. He works almost exclusively with black and clear frits, powders, and stringers on clear sheet glass. He often begins by sifting a layer of fine black frit onto clear sheet glass and then moves it around with a brush to develop the outlines of his subject, which we see emerging as the head of a figure. He then turns the sheet of glass 90 degrees and a full figure begins to emerge in the center of the composition, which he then moves to one side. He continues to draw in this manner, working from images in his head, while also responding to opportunities he sees in the material itself, until the drawing includes two figures against an extremely simple background that is rendered using stringers. Prochaska frequently uses these simple backgrounds as a contrast to the more gestural handling of the figures in the foreground. This gives those figures an increased sense of psychological presence. He is also a master of mood. We clearly sense the malaise of this figure lying in bed. And here, one practically feels the gritty smoke filling the air. Notice how the head of this figure is composed mostly of crisscrossing stringers. The cigarette, on the other hand, is rendered using just a few lines, capped with coarse black frit to create the ashes. Like the last piece, this drawing of two musicians is composed almost entirely of stringers, but the feeling is completely different, evoking jazz music. The lines move between describing contour and creating mass, suggesting something that is somewhere between forming and dissolving. The image is both unmistakably there and yet difficult to define. In this piece, Prochaska leaves small smudges of powder surrounding the figure to create a sense of atmosphere, while the figure itself seems almost composed of fingerprints. In this piece, he uses the metaphorical qualities of the material to perhaps take sides in what appears to be a heated discussion. The discourse issuing from the figure on the left is created using a few black stringers and a sparkling of tack-fused clear frit. Whatever is coming from the mouth of the figure on the right is composed of tack-fused black frits. While Prochaska arrives at his images through exploring the materials, and while there are specific effects that he can only achieve using glass, his work is ultimately not about materials and processes. Prochaska creates images with content. Our first impression is always of the subject, and only later do we begin to ponder its creation. Another artist who draws with glass is the Mexican painter and sculptor Rafael Cauduro, who was an artist in residence at Pilchuck Glass School in the summer of 2000. He was immediately able to bring the illustrative virtuosity of his work in other media to kiln-glass. Like Prochaska, he often begins by sifting powder onto sheet glass, which he then manipulates with a variety of different brushes to render carefully detailed drawings, to create hauntingly convincing images such as this and this. Sometimes he draws with his fingers as much as any other tools to render images that might look like this before firing and like this after firing. The artist Kathryn Newell also draws with glass. In this case, she fires a series of works on single layers of opalescent sheet glass that she subsequently slumps to make pieces that appear crumpled and windblown, a comment on the tenuous nature of identity. She has presented these drawings in all manner of ways, sometimes mounting them to walls, sometimes stacking them up in piles. Some of her drawings are executed on multiple sheets of glass that are first fired as individual layers and then subsequently stacked and fused together to create images of greater physical and visual depth. Whether working with stacked images or single layers, Newell shows great range in her drawings. Some of them appear as intermediate sketches, with just enough detail to give a strong impression of the character of her subject. Others approach a high degree of naturalism with extensive modeling of figurative detail. Oftentimes, she will tack-fuse final details to the top of the stack to emphasize highlights and create richer textures. And sometimes she will introduce the subtlest hints of color to create a richer drawing. And in other cases, she might use a concentrated color just in one area to balance a composition. Were it not for the vibrancy of the blue kerchief worn by this sailor, we might be too strongly drawn into the gravity created by the dog waiting at the doorway. Color is also often introduced simply by working atop colored glasses, which can make what would otherwise simply be a black and white drawing appear to have a much broader chromatic range. While there are many other artists drawing with glass, the final artist we will consider is Jeff Wallen, who often draws the human figure from life. He works on sheets of glass that he has assembled and fused together from scraps and other small pieces, and uses powders to create grays, ochres, and other earth tones, resulting in a rich, sometimes brooding palette. The qualities developed by the construction of the fused sheets become critical drawing elements in themselves, contributing to the sense of atmosphere and tonality in his works, giving some of them a quality like unfolded parchment that a figure is perhaps emerging from or dissolving into, as with this subtle collage-like background. Working from a live model in his studio, he develops pieces over multiple sessions, firing between sessions. And though he often works with the model over multiple sessions, he is mostly interested in capturing what he sees upon first glance. What details immediately catch his attention? What does he feel right away? Ultimately, he tries to get to the essence of his subject. The work of Wallen and the other artists we have explored illustrates that while drawing with glass can call upon the many devices available to those drawing in other media, it also provides unique opportunities not available in other media. Imagine translating drawings done by artists from other points in history. How would you approach this work by Kata Kollwitz? Or capture the spirit of Emil Nolde? Or that of Alice Neel? How will you express your own ideas in drawing with glass?